Y'all, Wizard101 just finally added something that the community has been wanting for months. I'm standing right next to a new boss that they just added, and it's an instance called the Lair of Lightbane. This is a new gold key boss that you can do, and the drops are massive. Now, instead of opening up the Burrower's Rebellion pack in order to get all the gear, and especially the spellments for all of the spells in this, you know, and like really pay to win pack, instead of doing that, what you could do is, if you have gold keys, you can grab a few friends, you can farm this, and you could basically get spellments for free. Now, are the spellments from this pack that important that, you know, you need to like max tier them? Definitely not, but let's say that you haven't learned them yet. This is a great way to learn them without spending any money at the cost of just a few gold keys. Now, though the storm spell is like, you know, maybe worth learning because extending a heal by 2 rounds might actually be cool, the really good spells from this pack are the overtimes. So the life lore spell and the myth lore spell, these overtimes, in my opinion, are actually very game changing, both in PvP and not, and these are actually maybe even worth max tier. Now, while I'm here, it is worth mentioning they did nerf the life spell. This is something that I didn't actually expect them to do at all. So now, basically, the max tier version of the previous version of the spell is now the lowest tier version of this. But if you really do the comparison, it is a nerf. What it used to be was 2 pips and 1 life school pip in order to do a certain amount of damage. And yes, it did a little bit less than what you see right now, but for a whole extra pip, it is not getting an entire life damage pip, you know, extra bit of damage. Like, it's not getting a whole bit of that. You're basically having it cost more for less, and that's probably because this spell was getting absolutely spammed at low level. It was getting spammed at high level too. It was just a very OP spell in general. It's been a while since they've just like curtailed the damage on something in such a sneaky way like this. But yes, this is worth noting. If you thought that you were about to get a broken max tier 4 pip spell, you can still get a very useful max tier 5 pip spell, but that's the situation with life. They did do that. If you're new to the way they're doing this, basically they did a huge spellman overhaul, and the idea, I guess, presumably behind it was that you add a bunch of instances like this where people can get spellments, and then you eliminate the issue that used to exist where you would only gain some spells by opening up packs. This change took place about a year ago, but what it basically did was remove the status of spells, many spells, especially lore spells, from being completely pay to win. And I thought that the way that they handled the Burrower pack and the Lightbane boss is actually like very interesting to me. This was the first pack that they released with new spells in well over a year, and since then they had already added spellment sources that you can farm for everything. So this actually was the big test of what their future is going to look like when it comes to pack spells and how quickly the player base is going to have access to a place to farm them. So they released this about 2 months after the original Burrower pack came out, which is a huge difference to having to wait 2 years when you're looking at spells like the very infamous Celestian Spellman pack. The 4 spells from this pack, right, Nautilus, Celestial Intervention, Ship of Fools, and Spiritual Tribunal, they actually were all somewhat meta at different various points in time, and they were never able to be farmed until the Spellman update that I talked about that they did about a year ago. I believe that this pack was released in the year 2020, and that update was last year, 2022. So it's good to see that a time frame like 2 years is not the norm anymore. We didn't really know when they were going to release the Burrower gear and the Burrower spellments in a farmable way. They did it honestly pretty soon after the release of the pack, to the point where the people that paid for it, yes, you probably got some early access, but in the long term, these aren't pay-to-win elements of the game. Now, the gimmick of this boss, not to spoil it, if you were to try it yourself, I'll be farming this on Twitch, so make sure you turn on noties to my Twitch in the description. But the gimmick of this boss is that it comes with 60,000 health and 300 resist. And there's a way to disable the resist by interacting with the minion, or you could brute force it and just run a bunch of Pierce, which is what some people are doing in order to just damage the boss through all of its 300 resist. As far as like the actual battle design, the boss doesn't seem like, you know, it looks pretty basic. Looks like a Chrysalis boss, and here's a good idea of what the drops might look like. Now, this is the real issue that I did want to talk about, and hopefully this is just something that, you know, the community will decide on as like a whole. But this is the first pack with not only do you have 7 schools of spellments to get, but you also have 7 schools of themes, rings, amulets, and main pieces of gear to get. And while a normal standard drop from this does involve multiple gear pieces, and as you saw, many spellments, hopefully they did the math out where the amount of time you spend farming this boss isn't drastically more than other bosses. At least by sheer number of runs, it should be the same. If the difficulty of the boss makes it so the runs are actually longer, then whatever. I guess that's an L that we have to take. But drop dilution is a serious issue that is, honestly, it's not just this gauntlet. I feel like it actually affects this pack. When you're one wizard trying to get 1/7 of this entire pack, right? You're gonna get bogged by all the other things that are meant for all the other schools. So I assume that they did make some of the drops a little bit more generous, but did they make it up to 2 times more generous because we're looking at 2 times the number of spellments to get? That's a real question. I think we'll only be able to tell by doing many runs of this. It's a little too early to tell, but overall it does seem like they've actually listened to the community on this and actually delivered in pretty decent time. I mean, I want to say that the Burrower gear is probably one of the more controversial packs. It created all kinds of problems in PvP. There was all kinds of pay to win issues with the spells. It affected low level PvP in ways that I didn't even expect. I don't think anyone could have expected that. But finally, it looks like they've nerfed the few spells at least that are pretty problematic at low level. They've given access now to like anybody who wants to go for this. And as a final note, in case you guys are wondering about the other things that they've done in terms of accessibility for this gear, because this is something that has really affected PvP, if you do PvP, you can get a version of this gear that gives you exactly the same stats. However, it doesn't look like it, and it also gives you -100 mana, so it's only really usable in PvP. Now, I didn't really talk about this, but my big intuition is it's honestly, you know, it's not bad. Like, elemental metals and bronze metals, those are pretty easy to get. Amethysts, you just craft them. These are 20 arena tickets each, so you do the math. It is quite a few games, but it is pretty easy to craft, honestly. And while it is easy to craft, you don't really get to use this outside of PvP, which is kind of weird because, I don't know, why not just be able to use it? Like, is that really going to affect anything? I don't think so. But yes, for the first time ever, within 2 months of releasing a pack, they've released multiple sources to get this gear that you can do without paying. And what's really cool is this appeals to players that can do PvE, appeals to players that do PvP. Y'all, these actions, I'll have to be honest, they represent quite a bit of progress from KingsIsle, but it also exposes the fact that when they're releasing these packs, they're also creating a lot of issues as well. And hopefully both ends of this issue, right? The actual introduction of these things and the acquiring later along the line, both of them get polished so that, you know, like, you know, this type of gear doesn't become as disruptive and cause so much controversy. And at the same time, as they've done, you know, like, hopefully there are more ways for people to interact with this gear without having to pay right away, right? I mean, now hopefully this is something that maybe we wait a month for in the future instead of 2 months. A guy can dream. But I'd love to hear y'all's opinions on this. I plan on farming this because I don't want to open up a bunch of packs to max tier my spellments. So this is something that I will be doing. Do you guys plan on farming the boss? Do you guys plan on doing PvP for the gear? And how do you guys think that KingsIsle's dealt with all the controversy around the Burrower gear? What do you guys think they've done the months after the release of this pack? Or do you guys think it's a W? I look forward to reading all of y'all's comments. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon. And yeah.